Good morning. We're in Cardiff, and I'm dreaming of somewhere else. Celts firmly believe uh, that life is elsewhere, and that's why we travel, voyage, wander, the whole bit. It's just the way we are. So it's not surprising that someone like Oscar Wilde would have famously observed that Paris is where good Americans go to die. Now, I may end up dying in Paris, but in the meantime, I'm living in Bordeaux, and today I'm going to explain to you how that happened. Despite my passion for Paris, I ended up living in this astonishing wine capital on the Atlantic. Now, the plan was always to go to Paris. That was the focus of my French romance. All kinds of reasons which I'll explain over the course of this exploration of the manner in which I fell for France and why I live there now, which is fine. But the interesting thing, of course, is for me, the inexplicable thing is how I ended up not where I intended for so many years to go and perchance to live, somewhere else entirely. Somewhere else, for example, that I had never visited until I actually went there the first time, which was about 5 years ago. So, the original plan was to study in France in a study abroad program from the University of California. I was at UCLA, and there was a number of study centers abroad, and for all kinds of reasons that I shan't bore you with, France was my preference. So, not being a natural linguist, language is a hard word for me. They really take commitment, and it isn't fun. It's not what I'm naturally good at, but I want to do it. So, worked on my French, didn't work quite hard enough, and so in the competition for places at the University of California Study Center in France, I didn't make it. So I was disappointed. As it turned out, I ended up going somewhere else, which was delightful in an entirely different way, but France it was not to be. And then I discovered that the University of California Study Center in France was not in Paris. And I was shocked. I mean, how could this be? Wherever were they going to take us? And the answer was they were going to take us to Bordeaux. Now, I got over the disappointment and I got back to France and never got to Bordeaux. And that with 50 years divides the decision of the University of California not to send me to Bordeaux and my choice to go to Bordeaux. It was almost 50 years to the day when I arrived in Bordeaux. And it had lingered. Now, part of the reason it lingered, it was that the study center that I did go to when I was a junior, a third-year university student, was in Tokyo, and the choice of the University of California was simply brilliant. I mean, it was transformative. I had one of the best experiences of my life in a Japanese university that they had chosen brilliantly. And so, given the success of my Japanese stay, because I ended up 25 years there, I had confidence in their judgment, even though I didn't understand it. So, 25 years later, 50 years later, I arrive in Bordeaux, and the summer, and the airport, and European suburbs are not like American suburbs, but they're not really architecturally splendid. They are the afterthought of an art city, and the art city is the center, where all the fine things have been built. Where the bishops and the aristocrats and the monarchs contributed to this, and, for that matter, the successful middle classes, left architectural monuments, some of them magnificent, which give these European cities a distinctive feel. And so, as we came into Bordeaux, ignoring the suburbs, it was splendid. The Luna, the curve of the arc along the Garonne, where the city rests because it's a port city but on a river. We sail down the Garonne into the Atlantic and back. So we're not on the Atlantic, although the Atlantic weather patterns affect us enormously. So, got there. And I was on the northern side of the city where we were staying, which was interesting enough as it was. And curiously, in the hotel, they had this handheld device, like a remote for a television or electronic device, what have you. And it was a guide to Bordeaux. And it was sort of organized the way a magazine where you could bring up images and stories and what have you. And one of the stories was the 10 most romantic streets in Europe. Okay, start. Opened it up. There was Bordeaux, and there was street. Notre Dame. Not on the side of the city we were on. So I thought, for whatever reason, I ended up going on my own and across the city, which is always an adventure, and it's beautiful, of course. And I got to the bottom of Notre Dame and thought, something is going to begin here. Didn't know what. It was too far out in my mind to live there. I was very much a center sort of person, and this was the second arrondissement, and that meant it was slightly outside. So about, for those who know the city, about 15 minutes from the Grand Theatre, the Opera House. So started down Rue Notre Dame. Charming, charming, charming. Bang! There it was. This enormous parish church, cathedral scale, Saint Louis. Mid-19th century, Gothic revival, stupendous in size, I speculated later because we were on the docks of Bordeaux originally. And so I assumed that the church was there for funeral services for those who many people lost at sea. So the guilds and companies and groups and local associations would meet in great numbers to send off one of their own. And that's explained in my mind why the scale of this parish church was so big. And I'm a classicist, but Gothic has its way. Gothic, there's something attractive about it, even though my first reaction is no, it's too gnarly-garly. And Saint Louis is gnarly-garly, but stupendous. So, and there it is. So that has become an old friend. So further went down the street, and the charm offensive continued. The facades were late 17th, 18th, and into the 19th. Occasionally, the house, the apartment eventually bought, was early 20th century, as far as I can tell, but I think a conversion of an earlier edifice that was commercial. This is a commercial district. Buildings are built for commercial things, and people live above commercial activities and access points and garages and routes designed to take large bodies of equipment or commodities or what have you. So there's an economic, mercantile feel. It's a bit in that sense like Venice. And for the same reason, it's a commercial center. So I walked at the end of the street and looked up, and there was a for sale sign on a balcony. And after a long dance, we bought it. And so I started living on Rue Notre Dame, and my life in Bordeaux began. Now, to give you an idea, Rue Notre Dame is one street in from the river. And the way the Bordelais have organized their riverfront, now that it's no longer used for loading and unloading shipments, is they built a motorway, a two-way road through this. Yes, four lanes, I guess it is. Then in the middle of that is a tram line, a superb tram line. And then there are walking areas. You can walk along the banks of the Garonne, or you can walk along the interior line in front of the rather splendid buildings. So you have this wide expanse, and it opens up entirely the space, because the river's quite large, and you can see across the river to the right bank, which snobbish Bordelais like me never visit. But and we comfort ourselves by the assumption that people who live over there can see us, and therefore it's all fine, which is dreadful, but there it is. So Bordeaux. Now the magic of Bordeaux is not what people think. Wine capital. And I must say, if you've ever lived in a wine production region, a wine region, Australia, New Zealand, Chile, South Africa, Napa in California, let alone places in Europe, obviously, you'll understand. The consequence of being in a wine region is that people, ordinary people of also pocketbook sizes and classes, know their way around the wine bottle. They know their stuff. And as a consequence, the food and the wine work in tandem, so that the standard of food, both the quality and how it's produced, and then the quality and how it's cooked, and the quality and how it's consumed, and where it's consumed, all of this is magic. It just lives. And cities without wine regions are just not quite the same. So you've got that. Then you have the riches of the city, and that, rum trade, slave trade also, but the city was wealth, and they invested their money in the building, the architecture of the city. So that's another reason why it's stone magnificent. But that's not the miracle. The miracle is the people. The Bordelais, in my experience, other people have their own experience, are just extraordinarily good company. And I'll just give you 3 vignettes to give you a taste of what I mean by this. When I first arrived, I was in Anglo-Saxon mode. So we live on the first and second floor of a building, and we had an apartment there. So I came down the apartment in Anglo-Saxon speak, we are, mobilized. So I turned left and started going down the street. And I could see my wine merchant, he's from Provence, looked at me, and I could see he's clocking my land speed record. I could just tell. So when I got up close to him, he put out his hands, assis, café. So he made me stop, he made me sit, and made me have a coffee. And then he said, look, what you're doing is no good for you and no good for us. So don't. Now, you can see the connection that I had implicitly established already with the people on the street, that someone would take a foreigner aside and do that to them. And he was right. Now, another vignette, this is just a touch that came down one morning, same thing, looked right. But I saw a very odd thing. There was a car going down the road. There's only room for one car going in one direction. And there was a little boy on a bicycle going the same thing, proceeding away from me toward the end of the street, so the Credit de Martinique is at the end. And at the end, I saw a hand go up in the car and a hand go up on the bicycle. And it was a mother going off to work and her son going off to school. And they'd had a race down to the end of the street. Oh my God, the charm of the scene. It was just perfect. Finally, we must conclude with Iago, the dog of Rue Notre Dame. There are dogs and there are dogs, and we all love dogs, that's fine. But Bordelais dogs are another thing entirely. Iago, named for the villain in Othello, is a food snob. And by which I mean something quite particular, because I bar across from my street called Sardine, and Iago is a regular. And Iago will come down there and look. And so I asked Louisa, my friend who worked there, she said, well, Iago, I gave Iago a piece of baguette with some foie gras on it. Oh, whoa, that's generous. And she said, no, it didn't work that way. No, Iago spat out the bread and ate the foie gras. And I said, is he like that all the time? He says, yes, he's like that all the time. And I said, okay, let's do the ultimate test. How old is the Comte? He likes cheese. The Comte, how old does the Comte have to be? She says, it has to be at least 18 months. Otherwise, you won't eat it. A dog snob food. This is Bordelais all over again. Food is our sacrament. It is the highest calling to prepare and to consume. And the charm and the friendliness and the agreeableness of the population has completely seduced me. And I find it my mission in life to be worthy of living among these people who are so remarkable. And that is why I'm in Bordeaux.